In the quiet expanse of space, the coalition of alien species lived in an almost serene harmony. They were a collection of fragile civilizations, each one thriving in their own corner of the galaxy. Their focus was on knowledge, diplomacy, and balance, as they believed that only through peace and understanding could they continue to prosper. For the Zactari, a species whose skin shimmered like delicate glass and whose movements were slow and purposeful, the very idea of conflict or struggle was foreign. They had evolved in an environment where nature was gentle, where their existence had never been challenged by the harsh realities of the universe. The Zactari, like many in the coalition, had only heard of Deathworlders through ancient stories. They spoke of species from hostile planets, where life was a constant battle against the elements, predators, and the very ground beneath them. There were whispers of how these beings thrived in chaos, but to the Zactari, these stories seemed exaggerated, almost mythical. They had never encountered such creatures in their lifetimes, nor had they any real reason to. Their own lives were stable, carefully maintained by technology that kept them far from danger. But even with their advanced technology, there was one truth they could never escape: the laws of the universe were unforgiving. Deep in the outer reaches of their territory lay an ancient star, one that had been observed for generations. It had been deemed stable, a relic of the past that posed no threat. Until, suddenly, it wasn't. A cascade of warnings spread through Zactari space. The star was on the verge of collapsing, and when it did, it would unleash a supernova that would obliterate everything in its path. Panic spread like wildfire through the Zactari leadership. They had no means of stopping such an event, no technology that could withstand the sheer force of a supernova. Their colony on a nearby planet was directly in the line of destruction. Evacuation seemed impossible with the limited time left. The Zactari were not prepared for this. They had never needed to be. Their reliance on peace and stability had left them vulnerable in the face of cosmic forces they couldn't control. The Zactari Council convened, their voices shaking as they discussed the inevitable. This was not something they could diplomatically avoid or technologically solve. The destruction was coming, and there was nothing they could do. The fate of their people seemed sealed, and the weight of their helplessness crushed them. No one in the coalition could offer help either. They were all as fragile, as vulnerable to the universe's wrath as the Zactari. The supernova would be their end. And yet, amid the despair, a transmission arrived. It was a human fleet. The Zactari were hesitant. What could Deathworlders do that they themselves could not? Surely, if their own technology couldn't withstand the blast, these brutish creatures from a violent world had no chance. The stories they had heard about humans were filled with accounts of survival, yes, but this was different. A supernova was not something any species could endure. It was the very force of creation and destruction rolled into one, a cosmic event that reshaped solar systems. How could a fleet of ships survive that? But there was no other option. The Zactari allowed the humans to approach, their fragile hopes resting on the chance that perhaps these Deathworlders could delay the inevitable. The human fleet arrived in the Zactari system with a quiet determination that surprised the alien council. The ships themselves looked worn, not sleek or refined like the vessels the Zactari were used to. These ships bore the scars of countless battles, their hulls reinforced with layers of patchwork repairs. They seemed more like survivors of countless dangers than sophisticated tools of exploration or diplomacy. And yet there was something about their presence that demanded attention, a sense of purpose that the Zactari, in their moment of crisis, couldn't ignore. The Zactari leaders watched the humans with thinly veiled skepticism. These were Deathworlders, beings from a planet so dangerous that survival was a daily struggle. What could they possibly offer in the face of a supernova? The humans made no grand gestures, no elaborate speeches. They simply began working, communicating their plans in direct, practical terms that seemed out of place in the Zactari's world of endless deliberation. The human captain, a figure with an air of unshakable experience, calmly explained their intention to fortify their ships and protect the Zactari. At first, the Zactari were confused. How could these humans remain so calm? The supernova was imminent, and even the most advanced technology in the galaxy couldn't shield against such a force. And yet, the humans spoke as if this was just another challenge to overcome. The Zactari struggled to understand this mindset. In their culture, danger on this scale was met with resignation or retreat, not defiance. One of the Zactari leaders voiced what the others were thinking. This is impossible. No species can survive a supernova. Even our technology is insufficient. The human captain's response was blunt but confident. Your technology isn't designed for survival against the impossible. Ours is. The Zactari were taken aback. Could it really be that simple for these humans? Was their technology so different from the Coalition's, or was it something deeper, an attitude, a way of seeing the universe as something to be endured, not merely avoided? As the humans worked to modify their ships, the Zactari watched, their skepticism giving way to something they hadn't expected: hope. It wasn't that the humans had some magical solution. Their approach was entirely practical: reinforce the hulls, increase the power to energy absorption shields, and distribute the fleet to maximize the chances of survival. But there was a quiet confidence in the way they worked, a belief that survival, even in the face of a supernova, was not a matter of if but how. This mindset was completely foreign to the Zactari, who had never been forced to face such overwhelming odds. Time was running out. The supernova was near, and the Zactari still struggled to fully believe that these humans could save them. But they had no choice. Their own technology had been pushed to its limits, and no other species in the Coalition could offer more than what they had already tried. The Zactari leadership reluctantly agreed to follow the humans' plan, though the fear and doubt were still clear in their eyes. As the final preparations were made, the Zactari watched the humans with growing awe. They saw not just the technology, but the way the humans carried themselves, focused, unshaken, and utterly confident in their ability to survive. It was a quiet confidence, the kind that comes not from arrogance, but from experience. These were not beings who believed they could cheat death. They were beings who had faced it before, again and again, and had learned how to survive. The Zactari leaders exchanged glances. They still couldn't fully understand it, but something was beginning to change within them. Perhaps the humans were right. Perhaps there was a way to survive this, after all. For the first time since the supernova threat had been announced, the Zactari allowed themselves to believe that survival might be possible. The star collapsed with a fury beyond imagination. A deafening silence filled the space just before the eruption, and then it came, a wave of destructive energy that moved faster than anything the Zactari had ever seen. It was the raw force of a supernova, bright enough to blind sensors, and powerful enough to obliterate planets in an instant. The Zactari braced themselves, eyes fixed on their screens, fully expecting to witness their own destruction. But the humans didn't flinch. As the first shockwave hit, their ships remained in formation, their shields absorbing the initial burst of energy. The reinforced hulls, modified for this exact scenario, groaned under the pressure, but they held. The Zactari could barely comprehend what they were seeing. Their own ships had been positioned further away, yet still, they trembled violently under the onslaught, their shields flickering as they struggled to withstand the wave of destruction. Inside the human ships, it wasn't easy. The humans felt the strain of their ships taking the brunt of the supernova's force. Alarms blared, systems were pushed to the edge, but no one panicked. They were used to this, living on the knife's edge, walking the fine line between life and death. The human captain issued calm, precise commands, adjusting their position, increasing power to the shields, redirecting energy where needed. It was a dance of survival, honed over countless experiences in hostile environments. For the Zactari, watching this unfold was like witnessing the impossible. Their screens showed the wave of energy expanding, and yet, the humans stood in its path and endured. Every instinct the Zactari had told them that this was madness, that nothing could survive this force, and yet here it was, these humans, these Deathworlders, defying the very laws of nature they had known all their lives. The second wave hit harder. It was as though the universe itself was trying to crush the human fleet, but again they held firm. Energy surged around them, yet the ships, battered and strained, stayed intact. Aboard the Zactari vessels, the alien crew members whispered in awe, unable to tear their eyes from the displays. The humans were still alive. No one had ever survived this long in the face of such a force. As the worst of the supernova's energy passed, the Zakhtari ships trembled with relief, their systems barely holding together. But the humans remained steady. Their shields flickered, their ships groaned, but they were still there. The energy had been absorbed, distributed across their fleet, just as the human captain had predicted. What had seemed like impossible confidence had now been revealed as something else entirely: experience, preparation, and an unyielding will to survive. In that moment, something shifted in the Zakhtari. It wasn't just about technology anymore. The humans had shown them that survival was not about having the best tools or the most advanced systems. It was about something deeper, an unbreakable resolve to face the worst the universe had to offer and find a way through. The Zakhtari, for all their knowledge and sophistication, had never seen anything like it. The final shockwave hit, but it was weaker now, the supernova's energy spent. The Zakhtari ships endured it, though they could feel the toll it had taken on their systems. But when they turned their attention to the human fleet, they saw something they would never forget. The humans were still there, their ships battered, scarred, but intact. They had survived the unthinkable. The Zakhtari leadership was speechless. They had seen the impossible unfold before their eyes. Their world had been spared not by their own technology or planning, but by the resilience of a species they had once dismissed as mere survivors of a dangerous world. The humans had endured the full force of a supernova, something no one had believed possible. The silence that followed was profound, a moment where the Zakhtari understood, for the first time, what it truly meant to be a Deathworlder. In the aftermath of the supernova, the Zakhtari fleet drifted in stunned silence. Their systems were struggling to recover, and the remnants of the star's energy still lingered in the void around them. But more than anything, it was the quiet realization that gripped them, the knowledge that they had survived something they never thought possible, and it wasn't because of their own ingenuity. It was the humans. The Deathworlders had done what no one else could. Zakhtari leaders gathered, their expressions still etched with disbelief. They had just witnessed something that would ripple through the entire coalition. It wasn't just about surviving a supernova. It was about understanding what that survival meant. The Zakhtari, like many other species, had always believed that their way of life, their reliance on peace, stability, and advanced technology, was the pinnacle of civilization. But now, they had to reconsider everything. Humans had shown them that survival wasn't about avoiding danger or relying solely on advancements. It was about facing the worst the universe had to offer and standing your ground. The Coalition had always seen Deathworlders as anomalies, beings who thrived in chaotic, dangerous environments, but now it was clear that they were much more than that. They weren't just survivors, they were conquerors of the very forces that shaped the galaxy. The Zakhtari, known for their meticulous documentation and intellectual pursuits, began to process what they had just experienced. Reports were sent back to the Coalition, detailing not only the supernova but the role the humans had played. These reports, however factual, couldn't fully capture the shift in perspective that was taking place. It wasn't just about technology or tactics, it was about the resilience, the sheer willpower that the humans had brought with them. The Coalition had never seen anything like it. The humans, however, seemed almost indifferent to the attention they were receiving. They didn't linger for recognition or praise. Once the immediate danger had passed, they helped stabilize the Zakhtari systems, made sure everyone was safe, and prepared to leave. Their captain offered a few words of advice on shield reinforcement and energy absorption technology, but there was no grand speech, no expectation of gratitude. They had done what they came to do, survive and help others survive. That was enough for them. As the human fleet prepared to leave, the Zakhtari leaders tried to express their thanks, but the humans waved it off. It wasn't about thanks for them. This was just another day, another challenge met head-on. The Zakhtari couldn't fully grasp this attitude. For them, surviving a supernova was an event that would be remembered for generations, something that would reshape their culture and their understanding of the universe. For the humans, it was simply part of who they were. In the days that followed, word spread quickly through the coalition. The Zactari reports were studied closely, and the story of the human fleet's survival became a point of fascination for many species. Deathworlders, once regarded with a mix of caution and curiosity, were now viewed in a new light. They were no longer just beings from dangerous worlds. They were living proof that the impossible could be overcome. But for the Zactari, the event left a deeper, more personal mark. Their worldview, shaped by centuries of peace and stability, had been fundamentally altered. They realized that their reliance on technology and diplomacy had made them vulnerable, unprepared for the raw forces of nature that the universe could unleash. The humans, by contrast, had faced those forces head-on and emerged stronger for it. It wasn't just about admiration anymore, it was about understanding. The Zactari and the Coalition now understood what it meant to live in a galaxy with Deathworlders. It wasn't just their strength or their technology that set them apart. It was their mindset, their refusal to accept defeat even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Zactari knew that their own species, and perhaps the entire Coalition, had much to learn from the humans. As the human ships disappeared into the vastness of space, the Zactari were left to reflect on what had happened. The supernova had threatened to wipe them out, to erase their colony and their people from existence. But instead, it had given them a new understanding, a new perspective on what it truly meant to survive in the universe. And in that moment, they knew that they would never look at Deathworlders the same way again.